One of the really fun things in my week is doing this preparation for our Sunday classes. And a lot of it just depends on what I run into during the week. And I listen to a certain amount of podcasts and, I just take in information like we all do. And this week I was listening to a podcast on Sounds True. Tammy Simon was interviewing Joanna Macy. And I've been aware of Joanna's work for a long time, mostly around environmentalism. She's really inspiring for a couple of reasons. So when Joanna Macy talks about being 88 years old, she talks about her billions of years on Earth and how Earth itself is alive and how Earth itself has created this culture, this system of living beings that are interconnected, and that we're all part of that. So, one of the things that she talks about is belonging, and we belong in this system, this Earth system. And as a person, we belong to ourselves, we belong with other people, maybe, but we belong. So, that's one of the things that I thought we could just start with is to just sit with that for a moment. I belong. Notice your felt sense of that. I belong. And with trauma, we talk a lot about disconnection. And one of the effects of trauma is that we disconnect from ourselves and from each other. And so, reconnecting or connecting maybe in a much deeper way or level than we have before. What she's talking about might be what it is for us, or maybe it's something different. But that feeling that I have a relationship with myself, with each other, and with the earth, and that the earth itself, I'm part of that system, that the earth is alive. So when she talks about despair, one of the things about despair is Tammy Simon asked her a question about that feeling defeated. And it's really easy to feel that right now. There's so many things that are wrong with the world. There's so much pain. And so she says, I just choose to look at something that's not that. And so she's looking at what flourishes in the parts of herself that stay aligned with life. So, how can we move as individuals into a life where we're always encouraged and we're finding new ways of being creative and solving conflicts? And, one of the things I really enjoy about Facebook, and I've highly curated my feed to be full of good news, is that, I hear about projects that are happening of cleaning plastics out of the ocean or, all of these different things. Somebody will have several garbage bags and they've cleaned up their beach. There's a lot of small and large ways that people are working with optimism and working to clean things up and to feel connected with the earth, to feel like we're part of this. And so I look at this, as I do everything through a trauma response. And if we're feeling disconnected and hopeless and despairing, it's natural that we would feel that way. And we can shift our perspective as well and look at it from a different angle. She talks about the great turning and the great unraveling. And so in this podcast, she was talking about these three narratives that are all true. So the one is everything's going to be okay. We're going to make America great again. We're going to grow the economy. We're going to go back to what people call normal. And we're going to take what we can. We're not going to worry about the future. We're just going to satisfy ourselves right now in this moment. And then she talks about the scientists who haven't been bought and the journalists who haven't been too intimidated, which I thought was a very interesting way of looking at that, is that they're warning us that this way of life is destroying everything and it might actually be too late, that we might not be able to pull ourselves back and repair all the damage that's been done. And then there's this shift in consciousness that she's focusing on, and that I think is helpful for us to at least hold as possibility and as part of the narrative. These other things are true, but so is this, is that even when we're dealing with someone who, in the last time in his presidency, Trump might do a lot of things that we would see as harmful and destabilizing, that we're also feeling this groundswell of voices that we've maybe never heard before. And so all the social media, all the damage that social media can do, it can also really bring us together. We have a much more global sense. And so, scientists that are part of creating a world that really works for everybody, not all scientists have been bought by big pharma, for instance, or, indigenous people who have a very different worldview, and that people are finally being willing and interested in going, well, what is it? How is it that they see the world? How is it that that's different from the mainstream focus? And the sense that people have, and we talk a lot about, I get out into the earth and that's how I feel grounded. But this sense that it's coming through science that the earth is a living body, it's a living system, and that we're part of that. So she calls it the great turning and the great unraveling, that both are going on at the same time. And the truth is that we don't know how it's going to work out. We don't know if we're just going to continue on the path that we were on. One of the things I found very hopeful in, especially in the early days of COVID when people were home, is a lot of people were going, I don't miss everything about my old way of life. I miss some things. I really miss being able to see people, friends. I miss being able to travel. I miss being able to see family. But I don't miss the consumerism. I don't miss having to be on the go all the time. I like having more time. I like not being rushing around all the time. And so sometimes we have this thing that has such a negative effect in terms of people's health and lives and the economy, but it also gives us this kind of abrupt stopping point of like, okay, where are we right now? And is this where we want to be? And is this are we in alignment with our values as a individual and as a culture? Are we in alignment with our values? And if we're not, then we could do something different. So one of the remedies for despair is to hang out with people who have that kind of optimism or who have that commitment to the great turning, the being part of this, who are inspired by that and who are willing to work together and on ourselves in order to bring this into reality. So this YouTube, I'll put the link in the email that comes out. But if you just go to Joanna Macy, The Great Turning, there's a 2 or 3 minute clip of a movie that was done. And she's talking about how the whole world is waking up and seeing things with new eyes, honoring our pain. So this is very different. And this is very directly applicable to the work that we do in healing trauma. We get into our body and we're not deluding ourselves that everything is fine. We're really seeing things more clearly. We're healing our nervous systems. And we're experiencing for ourselves that it's okay for us to go directly into feeling sadness or grief or pain, that there's more than that here. We have a new sense of gratitude. And then we go forth into the world with that. We bring ourselves out into the world. And right now with COVID, that might be kind of a little bit more limited physically, but we bring ourselves here to this group and we bring ourselves to the people that we, visit with and family and friends and different people. So as we change and we heal, that also aligns with all of the other people that are doing the same thing. That we have this common experience. So she has a book she wrote with, I think it's Chris Johnson, called Active Hope: How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. And I love the definition of this hope as not something you have, but as something you do. One of the big things about trauma is that we feel that we don't have any agency. And when we were children, that was certainly true. We had very limited agency as children. We're kind of stuck with the adults in our life, our parents or other people. We're stuck at the school we're in with the bullies that might be in the school. We're stuck with a lot of things. And as we become adults, we have a little bit more power to choose something else, choose who we live with, choose to do this healing work. But that hope in her definition is something that we do, it's a verb, and that we can act even as we feel despair or hopeless, that we don't have to feel attached to the results. We don't have to say, okay, if I do these things, then this is going to work out. We could just do them because that's what the next step is. We join other people in moving towards the world that we want to live in. So she talks about this fundamental change in this little video clip and in this movie, that the largest social movements in human history are emerging, and we're together. And we've seen them with, in this image, it's the Women's March. It's my voice, my story, my body, unite for hope. And that in Poland recently, we saw a right wing government had um, ruled against abortion, made it harder and made it illegal. And there was a huge uprising of the women in that country that says, no, we're not going back to that. And I haven't followed up on it recently, but the sense of it was is that they were going to have to. The leader of the country said, well, we might have to actually back away on that because that's not going to work. So we have this sense that we can connect with other people, and as we wake up and as we feel more connected, then that's our power. And that's what inspires us to work for the environment, to work for gender equality, to work on anti racism, to work on all of the different ways that people are made to be other, that we can do that together. And we have to be awake. And so, how are we going to do that? Well, we have to be able to be present in our body and with our experience. And one of the ways that that makes it a little bit easier is to know that we're not the only one, that there's not something fundamentally broken or wrong with us because we have trauma responses, that we're here with this groundswell of social justice movements. And it's true that there's a backlash. There's true that, there are people who are fighting against that. But my sense of this is that we are on the right side of history and that this is the direction that we're going. All right, let's go into the inquiry. So if you're using this structure, if you like the structure of what's on the left is our conditioning, our beliefs, our fears. What's on the right is freedom. And then the inquiry is what we're looking into. How do we let go of what holds us back? What is it that's in the way of freedom? So some of the beliefs might be that climate change has gone too far, we're doomed. And it's certainly true that there's been a lot of irreversible damage. So that's true. We need to be fact-based. We don't have to have this sunny kind of rose-colored glasses look at something. We can acknowledge some of these are fears and beliefs that are conditioning. Some of them are facts, but we can just look and see what it is. Another belief that's very common is that people will always hurt each other and our society will always be divided. Again, it's certainly true right now. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it is true right now. Another thing that we are proving wrong all the time is that we can't change our survival responses. And we know through the work that we're doing that we can actually, and we can heal that skewed neuroception where we feel that things are a threat that actually aren't. And we can stop taking things so personally. We can have a different perspective. There's lots of ways that we can change our survival responses. We can breathe, we can orient ourselves back into this moment. We actually have a lot of agency there. And one thing that I know in every cell in my body, and that a lot of us know, is that we can make a difference. It might not be immediately evident and it might not be what we feel is needed, but certainly we can. So let's take a moment now to kind of flesh out what would be in your conditioned beliefs around this moment in time. What do you believe to be true? And as you're doing that, you could notice, what does it feel like in your body? Notice if you're getting into catastrophic thinking and kind of shut that down. So we want to see it, but we don't want to go down the rabbit hole. So you could use some tapping, bring your attention into the sound and sensation of your fingers on your forehead. You could take some deep breaths, look around the room, orient yourself back into this moment. What are these fears? If you say, I feel hopeless, what's your evidence for that? And there might be a lot there. And if you were to be completely free from that, so if you put that over on one side of your body, on the left side of the body, and on the right, how does it feel on the right side of the body? What's there? We'd have that clarity, we'd have agency, we'd join with others. What would freedom feel like? And then let's spend some time on an inquiry. So the two I've suggested here might resonate with you, or you might come up with something of your own. So when we're looking at all the conditioning that's on the left side of the body and then the freedom from that conditioning, what is it that's keeping you from being free? One suggestion is I bravely let in reality to feel and heal my moral, mental, and emotional pain. So that's a reverse inquiry. It might not be true. It's not an affirmation. It's just we're looking, saying those words to see where's the resistance. Or it's worth it to me to act even when I feel hopeless. So to work with an inquiry, one of those or something else. And we look to see what comes up. What does it feel like in your body? Stay connected in your body, your breath. And if things come up, thoughts come up like a feeling of despair, hopelessness in your body, or thoughts in your mind, it's no good. I'm never gonna be able to do this, or it doesn't matter what I do. I'm just one person. Anything like that. Notice that that's part of your conditioned beliefs and fears. And put them on in that structure along with all of the other conditioning that you have. It's a thought, might be accompanied by a feeling in the body. And what is it that's keeping you from freedom? Notice if there's something in the way, some experience, some proof that you have. What's in the way of exercising agency, of joining with others to put hope into your life as a verb, as an action? And then as we look at it, we can see what's the evidence for that? Where did that come from? Is this part of me that's 7 years old or 13? What is the sense of age? How do I know that there's no hope, that it's useless to try? Or maybe there's some feeling like I don't have the power to step into this fully. So there's a lot of nuance here. Let's stay with what's coming up. And then if you want, move into more of a visual or a felt sense of, with some detail, what would you like to work with or work on? If there's one issue that really feels like it's a place that's urgent, that you could have some impact, that you're interested in, it kind of fires you up, what might that be? And then what would it be like to be taking steps towards working with that? What would be happening then? So I'm going to let all of these different arenas flow through. Be aware of them in your mind, your body. And there's always an internal component, working with our hearts, keeping our hearts open, healing our own trauma. And how might you bring that out into the world? Maybe in a different way than you are now, maybe in a similar way. It might be local homelessness or a food bank. It could be around racism or transphobia, whatever it might be. What is your felt sense? And let yourself just kind of take, 3 or 4 minutes to kind of feel into this. What has you on fire? And what might that be like? What would your steps be? Kind of visualize yourself moving into that. You might visualize yourself making a phone call or being with some people or on a Zoom call or reading or educating yourself. What is it that are your next steps? But what's happening down the road too? What does it feel like to be working with other people and taking steps, taking actions? And notice there might be arguments, there might be resistance there, and we could have a look at that. Well, that'll never work, or anything like that. Just do some tapping on it or let the thoughts move to the background. Right now, we're not working with those thoughts. We're working with a real felt sense of moving into action, what that might be, what arena that you might be working in, and what would that feel like? And if you were to sense into, I can do this even if I don't see immediate results. My inspiration for continuing will be the path itself, not necessarily the end. It takes a certain amount of emotional stability and maturity to work long term for justice, knowing that we might not reach where we want to be, even in our lifetime, and that it's still worth it. And then let things kind of settle a little bit. In a couple of minutes, we'll come back to the group. So if there's final thoughts, anything you want to make a note of or write down, just to let it kind of move all into your heart, let yourself settle in your heart center. What does your heart know about this? And there might be a lot of mixed feelings. That's fine. We could set an intention to move forward in some way that feels right to us. And if we don't know exactly what we want to do or what it feels possible to do, that's fine too. We could just be patient and kind with ourselves. We don't have to have it all figured out. A lot of this gets figured out as we actually start moving along, taking steps. We don't need to do that in the beginning necessarily. Great.